There's an invisible wall between you and your next client. You can have the best offer, the cleanest website, 100 5-star reviews, but if you can't break through the wall, none of it matters. And the wall isn't your pricing, it's not your niche or your customer service. It's that you're speaking to the wrong part of their brain, pitching logic when their buying decision is about 95% emotional. Facts, figures, credentials, those things matter, yes, but they only drive the other 5%, and no amount of bullet points or feature lists is gonna tap into that. But stories can. Stories are how humans have communicated anything important for thousands of years. Coming up, I'm gonna show you exactly how stories tap into the part of your customer's brain that actually makes buying decisions, the 3 specific places you need to use them to turn strangers into clients, and the simple frameworks that make telling these stories almost effortless, even if you don't think of yourself as a natural storyteller. And if you actually put this stuff into practice, you don't need 6 months to see it working. We're talking 21 days, maybe less. This is what I've been helping clients and thousands of my students in my paid programs do for over a decade. And trust me, it's the only thing that works this predictably, this fast. To understand the power of stories, we gotta go back to California in the 60s. Researchers at Stanford ran an undercover experiment on a class of unsuspecting students. They had half of them give short presentations using stats and data, and the other half using stories to make their points. Then afterward, they tested the audience to see what they remembered. And the results weren't even close. Only about 5% could remember specific stats that were mentioned, but 63% remembered the stories. And honestly, that tracks, right? Think about how humans have always communicated in every culture since the dawn of time. We didn't evolve reading spreadsheets around a campfire. We evolved telling stories. It's how lessons got passed down, how warnings of danger spread, and how trust got built between people who needed to rely on each other. Your brain is literally wired to pay attention to stories, to remember them, and this is the part that really matters for your business, to trust the person telling them. Now, you've probably heard this advice before. Marketers love to say, tell more stories like it's some magic bullet, but if you're anything like me, you heard that and thought, okay, but what does that actually mean? Am I supposed to have characters on my website, tell some big dramatic start to finish story in every video or podcast episode? I mean, it sounds nice in theory, but nobody really explains what storytelling looks like in a business context. And no, you don't need to become some master storyteller who weaves these epic narratives into everything you do. That's not what this is about. It's really just about knowing the 3 key places where the right kind of story can do the heavy lifting for you. And these 3 places just happen to line up pretty perfectly with how people actually find you and eventually become clients. First, there's your content. That's the top of the funnel, the free stuff you put out into the world. Now, for me, that's YouTube videos, but it could easily be a podcast, blog post, whatever. This is just where people find you for the first time, start to get a feel for who you are, and begin to trust you. So you're casting a pretty wide net here. Second, there's your website. That's the middle. So once someone's watched a few of your videos or read some of your stuff and they're curious enough to check out what you actually do, they're gonna head over to your site. Now things are getting a little more serious, right? This is where you need to take them on a journey from, I have this problem, to, I think this person might actually be able to help me. And third, there's email. That's the bottom of the funnel. So once someone's on your list, that's where the real relationship builds. You keep showing up, keep helping them, and then over time, they become a client. Now, stories work a little differently in all 3 places, so let's just go over all 3 one by one. Starting at the top, your content. And I'm gonna be using YouTube as the example here because that's what I know best, and it's honestly what works the best. Now, using stories in your content doesn't mean you need to turn every video into story hour. You're still teaching, you're still giving practical value. That doesn't change. But when you're explaining a concept or walking through a strategy, the thing that actually makes it land is when you back it up with a real example. A quick story from your own experience, or even better, from a client you've worked with. I call these micro stories. They're short, maybe 20 to 60 seconds, just long enough to prove your point and show you've actually done this stuff in the real world. And there's a really easy way to keep them tight so that you don't go off on some 5-minute tangent and lose everyone. All you need are 5 simple story beats. First, the situation. This is your starting point. Where are we? What's happening? Who's involved? This grounds people so that they know what world they're stepping into. Maybe a personal trainer would start a story out like,
one of my clients came in a few months ago with big news. He just landed his dream job.
Second, the desire. What did they want? What were they trying to reach or achieve? This is where your audience starts to lean in, and they really start to care about whether this person gets the thing or not.
He worked really hard to get in shape over the past year. He didn't want to lose all that progress.
Third, the conflict. What's in the way? What's the obstacle? This is the tension, and without tension, there's really no reason for anyone to keep listening.
But this new job had him traveling 3 or 4 days a week, crappy hotel gyms, eating out for every meal, zero routine.
Fourth, the change. What shifted? This is the turning point of the story. It could be a realization, a new approach, a moment of clarity. It has to show movement.
We threw out his old workout plan entirely and built something around what he'd actually have access to. 20-minute bodyweight circuits and a stupid simple rule for ordering at restaurants.
And fifth, the result. How did it end? What's the new reality? This is what gives people that satisfying closure.
6 months later, he's actually in better shape than before he took the job.
That's it. You're in, you made your point, you're out. And now everything you were teaching has weight behind it because you just showed them it actually works. Now, having that structure is great, but how you actually tell the story matters just as much, maybe even more. And the biggest mistake I see are people summarizing instead of showing. They stay kind of too far away from the moment, like with that personal trainer story. If you just say, he was worried about losing his progress. Okay, sure, but I don't really feel anything from that. That's just a label. But if you were to say,
he kept asking me, what happens if I miss a whole week?
Now I can hear the worry in his voice, right? That's what makes stories stick, the little details. What did they actually say? What did you notice about how they were acting? And what was going through your head at the moment? You know, you don't need a lot of these details. Just 1 or 2 is enough, but those specifics are what's gonna pull people in and make them feel like they're experiencing it with you. The other thing that helps is to relive the story rather than just reporting on it. This is subtle, but it makes a difference. So instead of,
he told me about his new job and I could tell he was stressed.
Why not try,
he sits down and says, I don't know how I'm gonna make this work.
Present tense. It sounds small, but it does a good job of putting your viewer right there with you. And here's the part that might feel a little uncomfortable, share what you were actually thinking. Not the polished professional version, the real version. Something like,
honestly, my first thought was, this guy's gonna quit on me within a month.
That kind of honesty is what builds real trust. It shows you're human and it shows you've had the same doubts that your audience is probably feeling right now too. Okay, so you've told this quick story, you've pulled them into the moment with a couple of specific details. Now what? You can't just awkwardly pivot back to whatever you were teaching. That's gonna feel clunky. So to fix that, to smooth it over, you just need a bridge. One sentence that ties the story back to the lesson that you're trying to teach. Something like, the reason I'm telling you this is, then you finish that sentence with whatever insight you want them to take away from it. So with the personal trainer example, after you tell that story, you would just follow it up by saying,
the reason I'm telling you this is because most people think getting in shape requires the perfect setup, the right gym, the right schedule, the right meal plan. But that's not what keeps people consistent. What keeps people consistent is having a plan that works with their actual life, not against it.
Now that story has a purpose, right? It made your point 10 times more memorable than if you had just said, flexibility matters more than perfection. And you didn't have to be preachy about it. The story did the convincing for you. So stories in your top of funnel content are gonna help you build a bond with your audience, which should help you move more people to the middle of the funnel, your website. And I wanna be clear here, storytelling at this stage works very differently than what I just showed you. On your website, you're not so much telling a narrative story about a past event as much as you're leading visitors through a story-like structure. Think about how a good movie works. It takes you scene by scene, building towards something, and your website should do the same thing. It should take people on a journey from, I have this problem, to I think this person can actually help me, to, okay, I'm ready to take the next step. And here's the key that makes this work. Your visitor, your prospective client, is the hero of the story, not you. Think about every great movie you've ever seen. Almost all of them starts with a hero who has a problem. Then at some point they meet a mentor who helps them win. Luke had Yoda, Marty had Doc, Aladdin had Genie. And that mentor is usually the most capable character in the story, but they're not the star. They exist only to help the hero succeed. And that's your role. Your website isn't about you, it's about your client, the hero, their problem, their journey, their transformation. You're just the one who's gonna help them get there. So the structure is pretty simple. You start by naming their problem clearly, because if you can talk about their problem better than they can, they're gonna trust that you know how to fix it too. Then you step in as the mentor with a solution and show them what life looks like on the other side. So give them a simple 3-step path forward so they know exactly how you'll get them there. Then back it all up with proof that others have taken this journey and won. And then invite them to take the next step. And by the way, if you want to go deeper on this whole website framework, I've got a free masterclass that walks you through it step by step, and I put the link to that in the description below. But of course, not everyone is going to be ready to take that final step the first time they visit your site, right? That's normal. So you also want to give them a lower commitment option, a way that they can at least stay in your world. A newsletter, a free download, something useful. That way you can keep showing up for them until they are ready. And that's where email comes in. And honestly, this is where stories really shine, because email is such a personal one-to-one kind of channel. You land in someone's inbox, they read it in their own voice, and when it's done well, it feels like a note from a friend, not like it's coming from a company. So to use stories in your email, just start with the point that you want to make. What do you want to teach them? What do you want them to take away from it? Start with that, and then ask yourself, what's a moment from my life or a client's life or something I saw out in the world that connects to this? When you work backwards like that, the story and the lesson already fit together. You're not forcing a connection that isn't there. And the structure itself is pretty simple. So you drop them into a moment, start mid-action, not with a big preamble. Then you make your point. It's the lesson, the insight, the thing you actually wanted to say. And if it makes sense, you bridge to an action, 1 or 2 sentences connecting the lesson to whatever you want them to do next. So for example, let's say you're a financial planner and you want to write an email about why people put off getting their finances in order. So you wouldn't start with, today I want to talk about procrastination. That's boring, right? Instead, you might start with something like, yesterday I was sitting in my dentist's waiting room, 6 months overdue for a cleaning, and I realized I'd rescheduled this appointment 3 times. Not because I didn't have time, because I didn't want to hear what he was going to say. That's the moment. Now you give just enough context. It got me thinking about how often we avoid things that are good for us just because we're afraid of what we might find out. Now you make your point. That's exactly why so many people put off looking at their finances. It's not laziness, it's fear. And the longer you wait, the scarier it feels. And then you just bridge to action. So if that sounds familiar, just reply to this email. No judgment, let's just take a look together. That's it. Story, point, bridge. Now the question I always get is, where do I even find these stories? And I think that people assume they need some dramatic, life-changing moment to write about, but you don't need that. That avoiding the dentist story isn't epic, but it is relatable. The best email stories usually come from pretty ordinary places. Your daily life is naturally full of them. What frustrated you recently? What did you almost give up on? What did you learn the hard way? What made you laugh this week? These are the little moments that are everywhere. You've just trained yourself not to pay attention to them. And your clients are another gold mine. What breakthrough did someone have recently? What were they struggling with before they started working with you? What surprised them about the process? And you can totally change their names and details if you need to, but these stories are powerful because they show real transformation. And then there's the whole outside world, articles you read, documentaries you watched, random historical facts that sparked a thought. And if you can't think of anything, ChatGPT can. It's actually good at this. So just tell it the point you want to make in the end and ask it to dig up some real-world stories or examples that tie back to it. And just like with your YouTube stories, make it specific. I was having a rough morning doesn't really land, but it was 6 a.m., I'd been staring at a blank screen for 40 minutes, and my coffee had gone cold. now I'm listening. I'm there with you. So if you're wondering where to start with all this, start with your website. It's probably the fastest win. You just have to make a few key changes using the customer saga structure that I walked you through, and you can realistically start seeing more clients in the next week or two. Now, to help you with that, I did put together this free masterclass called How to Build a Client-Generating Website that sells your services for you. So in that masterclass, I go way deeper on the whole customer saga framework that I mentioned, and I'll show you exactly how to apply it to your site. So click right here, and I'm gonna show you every single piece you need to nail to get way more clients and explode your business fast.